Big religion plays a very large role in this. I'm afraid to say the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops is probably most at fault, but National Association of Evangelicals is no better. Mainline Protestant churches are no better. Jewish denominations are no better. The Chamber of Commerce has been particularly awful on this issue. Remember those demonstrations a few years ago that drove the American people crazy when all the people were waving Mexican flags?
Yeah.
Remember, next time they went out, they had all those American flags?
Yeah.
You know who bought them for them?
Chamber of
Chamber of Commerce. Okay? Because the Chamber of Commerce wants to supply a lot of people to restaurants, a lot of people to cut grass. Okay? They want to keep all those little local businesses going with people making nothing. Our immigration policy is about greed. It's about political power. It's about identity politics. It's about the interests of foreign government. It's about sectarian concerns. It has nothing to do with social justice. And don't let anybody in a pulpit guilt trip you about this, because it's outrageous. The only way that you could say it would be about social justice if you believe it is right to rob Peter to pay Pablo. Okay, if you believe it's right to rob Peter to pay Pablo, then I guess it's about social justice, but I don't think so. A member of one of America's elite organizations, the Chicago Council on Foreign Relations, came up with a wonderful phrase to describe immigration. He called it the perfect policy storm. Why? Because there is no other issue in America that so profoundly and radically divides the fiscal and political elite from the vast majority of the American people. Now, those of us who've worked in this issue for a long time have been wondering, when it would go national. Well, it did briefly. You may remember back in 2007, when we had to contend with Senate Bill 1639 under Bush, and by the way, we nearly lost America. That was in June of 2007. That's a week that I will never forget. I was in D.C. all that week lobbying. We only had 33 votes we could count on Tuesday of that week. On Thursday of that week, we beat Harry Reid's attempt to impose cloture, and with 56 votes. What did we find out about the people on both sides of the aisle who switched their votes? They were all up for re-election in 2008. Okay? These are a cynical bunch of folks. I have to say this, and I don't say this with any glee. I say this with a sense of tragedy, that there are very few people in Washington who operate on the basis of principle. Yeah. There is one principle they believe in profoundly, and that is their own incumbency. And one of the most depressing experiences you can ever have, and I've had it now 4 times, is to testify before a congressional committee, because these people couldn't run 7-Eleven. Okay? I don't think they could figure out how to make it smart people. I mean, these people are pretty stupid. And they are monsters of narcissism. And if they didn't have their smart little congressional aides flipping them questions, they wouldn't know what to say. I remember leaving, I had a number of my colleagues from the office there the first time I testified. It was wonderful. John Conyers is chair of the Judiciary Committee, and Zoe Lofgren, an immigration lawyer from California, is the chair of the Immigration Subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee. I have to tell you that immigration lawyers, for me, are one of the lowest forms of life on this planet. One thing you know about an immigration lawyer almost immediately is that person graduated at the bottom of his or her law school. In any event, when you leave that hearing, I was surrounded by my friends, and they saw the shape that I was in. I had done fine. Believe me, it wasn't that I'd been doing an okay job. But when I left, they took me down to the Dubliner bar, and I had about 4 Guinnesses, because I was just thinking at that moment that monarchy or anarchy would be better than the government that we got. And it's a very sobering experience. Again, I'm talking to people who get it, and that feels great. You get it. You know whether you're talking about the mayor of this great city, or whether you're talking about your senators, whether you're talking about the president, or you're talking about people who actually represent danger to us. Now, I thought Obama was too smart to wander into the quicksand of immigration. He has never cared about this issue at all, by the way. Much less than Bush, much less than Bush. One reason was that Rahm Emanuel was now gone away. Rahm Emanuel at least was smart on this issue, politically smart. He told the president this issue, oh, thank you very much. He said, this issue is a loser with the American people. You're not getting the anger the American people are feeling. Now, Obama, again, he blocked Harry Reid from introducing a bill. Well, Harry Reid introduced it at 11:59, and the clock running. The fifth version of a bill that, by the way, went through no one ever saw, no one ever read. He went around the Judiciary Committee. I mean, the typical thing the typical kind of machinations that we come to expect with immigration legislation. I didn't think Obama would be stupid enough to do this, but he backed into the issue in a way anyway, didn't he? Because he directed his Department of Justice, that genius Eric Holder, to sue the state of Arizona over Senate Bill 1077. Now, I will just say one thing about 1077 and then pass on. If you read the mainstream media or you watch mainstream news, you would imagine that the people who wrote that bill were a bunch of used car salesmen. And this, by the way, is no offense to used car salesmen. I've only bought my cars from used car salesmen. Now, this bill was written by Chris Kobach, who I know very well. He's one of the best constitutional lawyers in America at the University of Missouri. He was the chief legal counsel to the INS under John Antropoff for 4 years. He wrote that bill to be bulletproof on racial profiling. Okay? The decision made in ruling in Phoenix was issued as a directive from the Justice Department of Washington. That judge didn't think about that bill for 2 minutes. That bill is now in the 9th Circuit in San Francisco. I know San Francisco is kind of goofy, and the 9th Circuit, by the way, is the most reversed circuit in the United States of America. Having said that, only a year ago, it upheld another Arizona law on immigration. And in the preliminary hearings so far, it seems as though the justices are leaning towards the state of Arizona. My guess is that the outcome in the circuit court will either be where we will end up is either more of the law will be allowed to be implemented, that injunction will be lifted on more of the law, and if that doesn't happen, it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and I can promise you the Supreme Court will find that law constitutional. Right now, 18 states are moving ahead with Arizona legislation, and that legislation is backed by every single demographic pollsters bother to study. Every group of Americans pollsters bother to study. Now, to understand how big a crisis immigration is, you have to understand scale. Scale is everything. And let me throw something out at you. Well, I'm going to get to that in a minute. The scale is colossal. It is unprecedented. It's without parallel. Most of us know about the great waves from Europe. From the 1840s, pretty much when the Irish began coming, through the 19th century into the early part of the 20th century, when immigration was largely from Eastern Europe and Southern Europe. I'm sure many of your grandparents, great-grandparents came at that time. That immigration looks like a trickle compared to what we're getting now. It's a trickle. And also we have to remember something else. The great waves were followed by what's known as the Great Pause. After 1924, mass immigration stopped. America essentially had no immigration. Very low immigration, mostly based on needed skills, very, very, very minor immigration until immigration was changed in 1965 and a new regime came into force. So now the flow, those waves are ceaseless. They keep crashing on the shore. And whereas before we had 40 years essentially to acculturate and to Americanize European immigrants, what's happening is these waves are reinforcing homeland attitudes. They're reinforcing the attitudes of the people who are coming with the attitudes of their countrymen back home.